Zoom might have been off and on recording. All right, so we're good? You guys good? Better behave yourselves.
Yeah.
I know.
Wild crowd.
I
know.
Okay, so I'm Martha Dennison, and I'm so I'm so grateful. I'm Vice Chair of the Board of Library Trustees, and on behalf of the library and the trustees, I really appreciate your being here tonight to do this. So this is the first of 3 candidate forums that we're gonna do this season. And hopefully this will be a long-standing tradition, right? So we've invited the candidates to join us for a relatively casual discussion. That's our goal. They had the questions that we're gonna ask in advance. And so those are the ones we'll discuss first. Again, if we have time, if people submit questions on the Zoom, or we do have a couple of questions that were submitted from the community over the last couple of days, Ted can decide if we're gonna ask those or not. Anybody on the Zoom, if you have a question, you can put it in the chat, and I'll be watching for that while we discuss the other questions that have been pre-decided. And so now I'm going to stop talking, and I'm going to introduce the man who needs no introduction in Duxbury.
Right.
Ted Flynn. I didn't even know all this about you. 35 years, an active member of the community, served on the town's finance committee in the 80s, 2 stints on the town's management study committee in the 80s and the 90s, including the committee that led the effort to modernize our government and create the position of town manager. Ted chaired the solid waste advisory committee, which brought recycling to Duxbury, served on the school committee for 2 terms, served as an elected member and chair of the board of library trustees, and then was elected to the board of selectmen, the position from which he's now retiring after 12 years. Holy cow.
Wow.
So I'm thrilled that you're here. Obviously, your experience is invaluable. So
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
And that and $2 will get you on the tee in Boston. Well, let me introduce the candidates. And because the audience, the Zoom people can't see the audience, correct?
Can
Yeah.
see.
They can. So they already know it's not packed. We don't want anybody getting out of hand, so you raise your hand if you have a question. Let me introduce the candidates. Dora Bustos is current secretary of the Library Board of Trustees and is seeking re-election for a 2nd term on the board. She is a wife, mother, and sometimes artist who has volunteered for the school PTA and PTO organizations. Dora's 3 teenagers would all agree that the library has been their way away from home during the years in Duxbury. Next, we have Casey Seaman. She's been a resident of Duxbury for 36 years, married to Dan Kostriva, and mother of 2 daughters, Amanda and Lisa. Casey has over 35 years of experience in the field of developmental disabilities, working with adults and children for public agencies as well as local nonprofits. She's been retired for about 3 years and continues to volunteer in programs supporting people with developmental disabilities, including the Department of Developmental Disabilities and Taking People Places. A 3rd candidate, Lucy Weilbrenner, is a graduate from Duxbury High School with the class of 2000, went on to graduate school from the University of Penn class of 2004 and the BU School of Law. Following law school, she clerked on the Mass Appeals Court for a year and worked as a federal attorney for about 11.5 years. She left work in early 2020 to stay home with 2 young children for a few years and has served on the Berry Book School Board of Directors while her children have been students there. So to start it off, we'll start on the other end. Lucy, why don't you tell us a little about yourself and what brought you to seek the position of library trustee?
So I grew up in Duxbury, and my mom was a library trustee many years ago when the library was transitioning to the new building. And my grandfather actually was a library trustee in Indiana too. But the thing that I'd say that more recently galvanized me to seek when I saw that there was a position that was open was the sort of kerfuffle with the finances last year and the budget and the suggestion that it hadn't been presented properly. And so the big reason is that my federal background as in litigation, I think, will make me an effective advocate for the library. I feel that the library needs somebody who's going to remind the finance committee that it's an advisory committee and that the library board of trustees is an independent board. And so that's a big reason.
Great. If the finance committee is listening.
Exactly.
Uh-oh.
I was a little worried they were gonna be in person.
Casey, tell us about yourself.
Yeah, so, as Ted said, I've lived in Duxbury for many years. I have a master's from Northeastern in education, and I've spent my career in working with people with disabilities. My girls have grown up here, along with me. And the library has always been a really very special place for us, especially there's something about when you're in a place when you see your children read for the first time. It's quite remarkable. I think for me, what there are kind of two things that really spurred me on of an interest in this. One is looking at the strategic plan and everything that it's proposed and the vision and the mission that is articulated in here is really close to my heart, close to a lot of things that I've done in my life in terms of working with people with disabilities and working with agencies in the community. So that is one piece. And I think the other piece was just living through COVID. And that really let me see how important a resource such as the library really is. I mean, that was my lifeline of normalcy during the COVID years. And I've heard that from a number of other people too. So part of what galvanized me is my gratitude for that and wanting to help the library help realize some of the objectives and goals they have in their plan.
Great. Thank you. Dora?
Okay, so I have 3 wonderful kids and I have been home with them actually for 18 years this month, which is crazy. My oldest will be off to college, and long story short is that I had 3 kids in 3.5 years, which is busy. So the library was our safe place. We would come here. It was the place that I could say, whatever you want, we'll take home. You want 20 books? Sure, let's take it home. It was safe. It was welcoming. And over the years, we've spent so much time here, really gotten to know the staff. And 3 years ago, when there was an open position, they actually approached me and asked if I'd be interested in running. And I naively said, sure. I know nothing about it, but I'd love to. And I took the position, and then it was COVID. So we began on Zoom calls, and that was really interesting. I'd say it was probably the best way to go about it because there's so much to learn when you first become a trustee. We interact with the library as patrons, and there's a whole nother world behind the scenes, and it takes time to get to understand that, to know the vernacular, to understand the cycles. I'd say it even took me up to half my term to really get a hold on how things work. And then once that happened, we were transitioning back into being fully open, and that's been a wonderful experience. We've really started to do such good work, collaborating with a lot of different groups in the town, really moving forward with some great things that I would love to continue to be a part of for another 3 years.
Great. But let's switch around a little and maybe start with you, Lucy. Libraries have played many roles in our communities. And what do you think our library plays in the town of Duxbury?
So right now, I think the library is certainly the center of the community. I think it has been for a long time. I think it's a place for people to gather with people in, similar ages, similar interests, people with little kids, people who are in their older years. I think it's a crucial place for that. It's also a place for people to access knowledge, gain knowledge, without anybody looking over their shoulder, without anybody judging them. You can look at whatever you read, whatever you want, learn about whatever you want at the library. And so a big thing that I think is the library is also, with all of that, is you consider that everybody's needs need to be met at the library. It's also a neutral place. It's a place for people to not feel judged, not be able to, learn whatever you want is really, I'd say.
Good, thanks. Dora, how about you?
Neutral space is exactly what I think as well. It, to me, is just a neutral ground for everybody in town to come and share information, whether they're learning, reading, interacting with other people, being a part of the programs that we put on. There's such a number of different ways that you can interact with information. And I think that that's the main point of the library, to really share that with the community and to do so in a way that it works for people at all levels. So, just as Lucy was saying, we really try to have something for everybody. All types of interests, hobbies, whatever it may be, we really want to have something that everybody can easily access and for free. I think that's the most important piece of it.
Mhm. Yeah.
Casey?
Yeah, I think I would echo a lot of what Lucy and Dora have been saying. But I'd also like to add that to me, it's been, what I have so appreciated about the role is that it's been such a welcoming place. I come here every week on Wednesdays with a group of folks from Carleton-Cushing, and I have always just felt so welcome and supported, and I think that is really a key of what the library can bring to the community. It really means a lot to be a place in town where, as you were saying, Dora, everyone is welcome, everyone is treated with respect. And it's a place where you can really have access to information that you can trust and that people can help you understand even further. So, I think it's really helped Duxbury feel an even more welcoming community.
Are there changes, Casey, that you'd like to see in current programs?
Well, I think I really appreciated some of the collaborative efforts that have been going on with a lot of the other groups in town, and also just with the schools and with the senior center, with Duxbury for All. There's been a lot of really good connections that have been being made. And I think that's something that I'd like to continue to see happening and maybe even expand upon even more. I think one of the things the library has been working towards is how to communicate their services out there a little more and have people understand what's being offered even a little more. The more people you get, the more feet you get in the library, the more people are going to understand and see what's going on here, all the wonderful things. There's so many wonderful things that this library is doing. And so I think that's one piece, is building on those collaborative efforts even more. I was talking to Lucy and Dora earlier too, just a specific program I was thinking about. One of our daughters lives in New York, and the New York Library has set up something called, I think it's called Shelf Help, where they curate books for you. You fill out a little survey, and the librarian then comes up with 5 books that come to you in a pile. In 2 weeks, they say, here's your books, and you come, and there's 5 books waiting for you that have been curated just for you, which I think would be a really nice addition to do. And it's another way to kind of get people even more involved in the library. Are there some other ways we can expand upon the community efforts that are going on? Could we add some kind of literacy piece to the work that's going on with homeless shelter, or when you bring food, can we also bring some kind of literacy help or information about the library to people? Is there a way to reach out to do that even more? So those kinds of things I'd really like to see happening more.
Coming from New York City, I'm amazed they came up with that idea. Sorry.
Anyway, I got somebody living down there now, so yeah.
Dora?
So I completely agree. I had in my notes here expansion, just continuing to do what we do. Our staff is wonderful and constantly coming up with new ideas. How do we interact with the community? What would they be interested in? What can we do? All the time. So I would love to see us continue to expand upon that. In order to do that, we have to be properly staffed. All the ideas are wonderful, and we all have so many, and it's a matter of making them happen. You need bodies to make that happen. I would say that during the COVID time, it shifted the way the library ran a little bit, and we're still we're almost there, trying to get back to that 100% fully staffed where everybody can do what they're supposed to be doing. So I look forward to that piece, getting us there, making sure that we have the correct staff in place to really continue to do all of these wonderful things that we have planned.
Lucy?
Yeah, I agree. There's so many wonderful programs already, and I'm sort of reluctant to answer the question too much because I want to know what other people in the community are interested in, not so much what I'm interested in. You know, I get my books, my kids come, we do lots of the programs here, and I think it's a wonderful place, but I'm interested to find out what the rest of the community would serve them.
All the services were identified as a challenge during the strategic planning. Starting with you, Dora, what do you think are the strengths and weaknesses of our communications effort, and how can we improve them?
So the strategic plan was such an amazing experience with what you were saying, Lucy. So we really did that with the strategic plan. We went out to the community and asked what they wanted. And the response was excellent, actually. We learned so much, and we compiled the plan to really, over the next 5 years, try and give the community what they're looking for. A big thing that came up was the communication, and we knew that we were lacking in that a little bit. So marketing is definitely something that we discuss frequently. The collaborations that we were saying earlier, those partnerships, really getting involved with other community groups, the school, the senior center, collaborating with them on programs. That's one important way to get more people involved. I also believe that it's important to note that patrons receive their information in different ways. So some people may respond better to a printed piece of paper that they actually pick up in the library. Other people see things on social media, through email, through the clipper. There's a lot of different avenues that people receive their communication to see what we're doing. And we really have our hands in a lot of that now. We're continuing to expand that. And I'm hoping that we can continue to get out there and try and reach as many people as possible.
Lucy?
Yeah, it's an interesting point. I hadn't really, I've had people receive information differently. And the big strength for me that jumps out is the Instagram and the social media accounts and the signs outside. I look forward to them changing.
Yeah, I do too. Those are great. Yeah, those are great.
And the ones inside too, the children's, you know, so the humor and cultivating that like sort of quirkiness, I love that. So, but now that Dora saying that, I would also say that it also bearing in mind that other people like more straightforward reception of information than just in the clipper, I mean, you know, or printed materials too. So finding maybe more ways to access people who receive information more traditionally, I'd say.
Casey?
Yeah, I absolutely agree. That was one of the pieces I had noted too, is just all those different ways that people receive their information and how to make that happen. I think another thing, and the strategic plan is awesome. I think, you know, I've done strategic planning in many of my other roles, and I think this is so well done, and it really does reflect a lot of the voices of the community, which is so important. And I think part of what might help with communication might be there are a lot of objectives in here and a lot of goals, and things had to be prioritized. So maybe you look at prioritizing the pieces of those goals that can help with the communication piece, because there are certainly pieces in these objectives and goals that can really help expand the communication of to the town and about all the wonderful things that are going on here in the library for sure. So that would be one thing. I think the paper piece is another one, maybe just a simple thing like having the monthly calendar when we're checking out the books that's there, that it's not just on the website, but it's a piece of paper that's there. You know, I think that the other pieces, you know, for some of the things that maybe like Dan and I went to the sign language piece the other night, or I guess it was a week or so ago. And we had gone to the town book meeting, from the Sign for Home, and it was such a lively, well-attended meeting, and it was inspiring, and it was great. It was such a great conversation, and it was so wonderful. And so we were excited to come to the next piece of that, which was the sign language training, and it was only a couple of us there. So why was that? It was so invigorating to start with, and then why was that second piece of it kind of not as well attended? So I think part of it is trying to figure out the why, what is it? Is it that people didn't know, or people weren't able to access it, or, or people deciding not to access it? I think those kinds of things, to get in the weeds a little bit, would be interesting to find out why. That would help.
Well, let me start with you, Casey.
Mhm.
Do you believe the trustees are elected to use their personal judgment in making policy decisions for the library? Or are they elected to represent the voices of the community to the library administration?
I really think that the role of the trustees should be this. Really looking to try to see how this represents the voice of the people, that has been really articulated so well in here. And I think as a board member, what I would have as my priority is how can I implement these objectives and make it happen?
Dora?
I thought that was such an interesting question. Yeah,
It kind of puts you on the spot.
yeah, no, it made me think about it in a way that I hadn't previously. I think for sure it's an elected position. We are here to represent the community. And I think that we approach all of our conversations in that way. We really make sure that we're talking for everybody. I think that's first and foremost. But that being said, I think that our unique lived experiences, they kind of color our viewpoints. And they deepen the conversations. So something that maybe I see in a certain way, someone else may not, and vice versa. And it just deepens the type of conversations that we can have, and it brings more to the table to maybe cover more bases. But definitely, we're there to represent the voices of the community.
Great. You're not escaping?
No. I was thinking, well, my answer sounds a little more, I don't know, clinical. I think the trustees are here to serve the voices of the community. And then to the extent that a trustee's voice becomes relevant, it's in a legal context or a fiscal context. It's more, if there's a final decision on a budget thing, that's where it's not necessarily even a personal belief, but it's a personal viewpoint to a certain extent. So that's where I see the personal part of it.
Interesting. The trustees are generally responsible for oversight of the library budget, and including ensuring appropriate town funding, which is typically a battle for the library trustees. There's many local priorities, obviously vying for the same pot. What do you think your role is in budget advocacy, and how do you think you could assist in that process? Lucy, why don't you tee it up?
I mean, that's really why I'm here, is to be a budget advocate for the library. It's 2% of the overall budget. They need people on their side advocating for them. So that's what I'm here to do.
Yep. Casey?
Yeah, I would agree. And, I have lived in the world of human services. That's been my whole career. My whole career has been not having enough resources and trying to figure out how to stretch and manage, as much as you possibly can. I've overseen, a ton of different budgets. I was the area director for the Plymouth DDS office, for 13 years in my last position before retiring, and we had a $50 million budget, and it was enough. It wasn't enough to support the needs of the people that we were trying to support. So we're that kind of trying to stretch and manage and figure out how to make as much as you can out of what you have. and also advocate and prioritize for what you need is something that I'm very familiar with. I've spent a lot of years doing that in human services.
Dora?
Budgets are tough, whether this is your home budget, you know, you're at work, here at the library in town, it's always a difficult process. I would say that teamwork and clear communication are really the most important pieces in my mind to making the process as easy as it can be. There's a lot of departments vying for the same money. I can't say one is more important than the other. For all of us, what we need is important to us. So recognizing that we are part of a team, we're gonna have to make concessions in certain places. That's absolutely a part of it. And then to advocate for what we actually need, to identify it and in line with the strategic plan. These are the things that, you know, the residents say that they want. And how do we make them happen? Okay, we've identified them. What do we need in order to make that happen? And then clearly communicate that, you know, backed by facts to the town. I think we've been really trying to do that in a more effective way over the past 2 years. And I can honestly say the process has gotten better than even when I first started. So continuing in that way.
As the recipient of all the budgets from the town department, I feel your pain. Well, how about major challenges that the library is going to face in the next 3 years? And how might you address those challenges if elected? Dora, why don't you kick it off?
Sure. So budget, I think that's always going to be a challenge. We have responsibilities to not only the town, but also to the state. So that makes it a little tricky. That's not something I really learned much about until I became a trustee. So that will continue to be a challenge for sure. In that regard, I think as a trustee, we're here to support Denise, our director, try and continue to help her make the right decisions and support her when she goes to the town, and we'll continue to do that in the budget process. I think meeting our strategic plan goals, that's a 5-year process. There's so many things that we want to do. So trying to stay on a timeline, making sure that we're constantly going back to that in all of our meetings, discussing and seeing where we're at with that. That's very important to keep us on track. And something that we haven't discussed yet, but I hope we get to, but the DEI initiatives that we are working so hard to enact. I know we'll discuss it more later, but I believe that will continue to be a challenge for us here at the library. And I think it's really important that we continue to move forward with the things that may be not so comfortable, but are very important to the town and to supporting our efforts as a town.
You're up.
I figured. I got to get in the flow. I would say that implementing these objectives is probably going to be a big challenge over the next 3 years for sure, for all the reasons that Dora mentioned and said so well. I think that the budget is always an issue, and trying to prioritize around how to make the budget work the best way to support the staff and to give the community in the town what they were asking for, as it shows in here. I think the piece that Dora, that you brought up right at the end there, and there's so much misinformation that is in the world right now. And I think one of the challenges as a library is how to help people cut through that misinformation and really have access to credible sources, credible information, and the means to really look at that information thoughtfully and be able to understand and make decisions. I think the other piece that I've seen the library step up to do, and which was another piece of why I really was interested in the position, is the outreach and the importance that they have put on DEI. And that whole piece around inclusion is very important and near and dear to my heart. And I think that's a piece that is going to be an ongoing challenge, as Dora, as you said, Dora, sometimes conversations about things that are different or strange to us is uncomfortable. And there needs to be a place where you can have those uncomfortable conversations, in a place where you know it's safe and where you can have them and have the access to the information that helps you with those conversations. And I think that's going to be a challenge for the library going ahead, to be able to be an active participant in that.
Lucy?
I think along the same lines, the budget and various programming, DEI initiatives, and also maintaining the library as a place of neutrality, reminding people that people are, like I said before, people are here to learn, people are here to communicate with one another, and they're here to connect. And so there is a lot, I think maybe it's the fallout from COVID, I don't know, a lot of disagreements, contentious disagreements, and the library is really not a place for that. It's a place for you to learn and grow, and within your budget constraints.
What should the library's role be? And we'll start with you, Lucy,
Mhm.
in promoting inclusion in our community.
It has to play a major role. It does. And what that role continues to look like is something that I think is ongoing, but so far I think they've done a wonderful job.
Mhm.
Yeah.
The committee on that's been created, it hasn't gotten really roaring yet, but I think it will, and maybe something, and I'm assuming, and maybe I'm wrong, that the library director is on that DEI viewer. It'll get going there.
That's the truth.
That's great.
No
That's great.
problemo.
That's great. That's great.
Casey?
Yeah, I think it has a very major role, for sure. It's to me, I mean, we're sitting here in this building and we're surrounded by stories, right? I mean, the library is full of stories, the books are full of stories. And it's the sharing of stories that help us really understand, and help us understand people that maybe we don't know, or people who we're a little uncomfortable with, or ideas that we don't really know and understand yet. So, I think the library has a very big role in really trying to help share those stories and help expand our perspectives within the community.
Dora?
Yeah, no, I agree. My fellow trustees can attest to how long it took us to rewrite our DEI statement, like months and months. But what's really important to us is putting action behind the words. So especially in these matters, sometimes there's a lot of words, and words are wonderful, but sometimes they're just that. And we really wanted to make our message concise, to use as few words as possible, and make sure that we put really actionable items in it, things that can prove to people, yes, we get it and we want to do it, and here's how we're going to do it. I think that that's the most important part. Everybody here, I can honestly say, is very passionate about bringing this to the community, and we're all committed to making it happen, and not just saying that we're going to do it.
Great. Well, I mean, we certainly as a town have an issue of diversity. If you look down the table, we are not a very diverse populace. And so more, I like your point, Casey, about sorting out the junk from the real. And somehow the library is functioning, promoting that. That could add a valuable part to that. But I diverse.
Diverse, not
Yeah.
diversity. Yeah.
How about our audience? Questions from the audience?
Easy questions?
Come on, help me out here, I'm dying.
Look, we did such a good
We
job.
can-
No one has any
Why don't we
questions.
just talk about book? What is everybody reading?
I think that what we're seeing here and what we saw 2 weeks ago at town meeting was There's no voter suppression here. Nobody's trying to suppress
True.
voting and things like that. And it's just really wonderful to see, you know, that, and congratulations to all of you who are eager to step forward in the community and follow in Ted's footsteps.
I
here.
know, I know.
Well, I wish there were 3 seats open on the board, you know, I would like all 3. Yeah, that, was it 961, I think? 966 people showed up for that
Well,
debacle, which cost us, by the way, when you talk about budgets, $20,000 to put that meeting on.
Wow.
And if there's
I
a
know.
way, and I don't know that there is, that we could prevent that from happening in the future,
mhm. Yeah, it's a lot.
it would be $20,000 that could go to the library.
I was gonna say,
For
we'll
example.
take
I know it, I
And then you
know
have
it.
to get rid of citizens petitions, then, I mean, then you, I don't think you can.
Anyway,
Yeah,
We'll just give one last statement and then we'll call it a night.
sure,
great.
please, we'll start off from you, Dora.
Okay, to finish, I feel like that's a lot of pressure, right? No, I would just,
So you should have sat in the back of the room.
right, I know. No, I would just like to say that I maybe fell into this position, but it's been such a joy. Honestly, I've really so enjoyed being a part of a place that's given so much to myself and my family. It's just been a learning experience. I've loved it, and I truly would enjoy another term, just to continue doing what we're working so hard on. Feel like I get it now, and I'd love to just hit the ground running.
Great. Casey?
I'm excited to be here. I'm excited to be able to think about all these questions. I've been excited to meet all of you, which has been great. But I'm hoping for this position because I feel so passionate about the library and everything that's going on and everything they're doing. All the help that it's given us and our family all throughout the years. It will feel good to give back and to feel like I can help support. And I feel like I have some life experience and some work experience that can help support some of the objectives and goals that are laid out in the plan. And I would love to be a part of that. I have felt so welcome here through all the periods of my life here in Duxbury. And but even more especially now, I would say even more especially now over the past couple of years. I think it's been an even more welcoming and open-armed space. And I would just love to be a part of helping to continue that to happen.
Lucy, you've already got the finance committee on notice.
I was gonna say, should I finish with, please don't be mad at me, I'm here to work with you.
Yeah,
Something nice.
Well, I'll tell you,
Sorry.
you still get a grant from the state library trustee that you may spend any way you wish. Well, there was a point in time that we were at the point of almost ready to sue the Board of Selectmen because the then town manager refused to give us the money, which we were using at that time, which I don't think is an issue anymore, of finishing the masters in library education, so people could get certified. So there's at least precedence for putting them on notice. So
Well, I know, and
take us home.
I'm here to be an advocate for the library. I love the library. I love the programs for it. But yeah, I also think it's actually a very serious role to be a trustee for the libraries. It's an elected position. And we didn't even touch on libraries in a national sense, but there is, to me, it is crucial that valuable people serve on the Board of Trustees. So.
I agree, yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you all.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much for
all
having
for
Thank
me.
you.
participation and for running for office.
Thank
Who
you.
knows, you
You
might
too.
set a precedent to be other people running
And
other offices.
not
I don't know,
trustees.
we
That's covered.
got a lot of work to do to try to catch up to you, Ted, I don't know.
I know.
You live long enough, Anyway, thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you.
thank you very
Pleasure
much,
meeting
thank you.
and,
you.
And I think you all did a great job.
Thank you.
Thank you, thank you.
Yeah.